Test. Everyone. I don't know how Carol always ends perfectly at 11 o'clock. When I play the piano, I'm off 5 or 6 minutes. So it's just amazing how you're able to do that. You're truly, truly gifted. Welcome everyone. For those of you at home, you can't see, but we have a number of people in here. We have 3, 7, 9, 10. We have about 20 people, a little less than 20, with a number of people outside. Everyone's safely distanced and wearing masks. So for those of you concerned, we thank you for that, and we're practicing safe social distancing. We started our live services back July 19th. For those of you who are keeping track, this is our second time to be inside the sanctuary since the pandemic. So we're very excited about that, and we know the new norm is still kind of moving into this space, but we're excited to be a part of that flow. I want to thank everyone that's helped us make that decision today and that helped us open up. So our order of service today, we have our leader, Shara, will be presenting the message for us today, and that is, I had it right here. Where is it? No, that's James's song. Where are my glasses? Oh, Love Knows the Way. So our leader will be presenting that for us today. We have our very own Carol and James HIggins providing the music today. We're blessed to have them. Thank you, James. And for those of you who aren't here, you're not going to be able to get any of James's CD on the table, but for those of you who are here, you're welcome to take a look. We have Mary Jean who will be presenting the platform for us. And then I, of course, have some business to share with you. So for those of you at home and here, Shara did her first workshop last Thursday from 6:30 to 8 o'clock on how to lead when you don't know where you're going. It was phenomenal. And Jean-Claude was there. Yeah, it was phenomenal. For those of you who haven't gone online to listen to Blair or Shara, I would urge you to seriously consider it. It's very short. It's a great message. It's a great workshop. We broke into small groups. And this is a good way to get to know our new spiritual ministry team. After Shara, we'll have about a week or two break. I think that's what we're planning. And then Craig will do, I think, the Tao Te Ching is what we're going to be doing. And I don't know if that's going to be 4 weeks or 6 or 8. 6. So we've settled on 6. So this is a very exciting way to get to know your spiritual ministry team and to get some nectar and some teachings and be with your people. Also, Marge's 100 Days of Prayer, I think we're on day 7. That's at Thursday also at 1 o'clock. And that's been remarkable for those of you who know Marge. She has anywhere from 25 to 40 people online, plus those who are looking at it remotely. So some board business. Hummingbird House is having a makeover. And I just wanted to let you know Shara's staying there 10 plus days a month. And because we wanted her to feel welcomed, we have really dove into it. So we have Connie and her partner Joe, Lisa, her husband Rick, Mary Jean making beds, plumbers, and Aaron. And we've completely had a makeover of Hummingbird House. It's beautiful. So when you're back on campus, if you have a chance and Shara's not there, we'd love you to see what it looks like with the new. Aaron, Youth and Family Ministry, we're looking at opening up. We haven't decided when or how, but Aaron is going to be actively talking to the parents and the children in the Youth and Family Ministry, and stay tuned on how we're going to do that. Steve, we've decided to purchase some smart sprinklers, so we're not going to be wasting money down the drain and down the street, or we're not going to be having plants that die needlessly, so he'll be installing a smart sprinkler system. Todd, our Chief Financial Officer, is just brilliant. He's prioritizing our preventative maintenance spend. And, we have to be thoughtful in how we do that. More to come. Lisa is working actively with Mary Jean and Christy on event planning, bringing in weddings and funerals, end-of-life services, so we can have some revenue streams. And then, of course, Mary Jean is working on everything else. Along with that, she's working very closely with our new leader with the prayer chaplains, Jean-Claude, and there's going to be some reinvigoration, some transformation and emergence in our prayer chaplains, and we're very excited and blessed to have you leading that. Further business after Easter, as Todd told you last week, we're going to start creating a new member entry process. So we'll be working with the spiritual ministry team, Mary Jean, the board, and myself, and how we can bring people in. And we're going to do it if it's only one person. We're committed to starting the process and opening back up, and it's also going to be a way for those of you interested in reaffirming your commitment to Unity of Tustin. Also, we're going to be actively rewriting the bylaws. We've had some volunteers to help us. We haven't tapped them yet, Kirk, but we are going to have conversations with them. And we're going to have board elections. So we're busy. We have a lot going on. And so that's enough on the board work, but I just wanted to let you know that we're actively working on your behalf, and we thank you guys for all your support. And so with that, I hand it off to my wife, Annette. Thank you.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Divine love, as we light this Christ candle, we recognize that the light of the Christ burns fiercely within each and every one of us and cannot even be extinguished by the Santa Ana winds. We hold true to this light and we allow it to stabilize us through the series and period of Lent, where we can release that which no longer serves us, trusting in the divine unfolding, that renewal, intelligent, loving renewal, is our birthright and is our inevitable blessing for us, for Unity of Tustin, and for the world. And with this, we give thanks and we say, Amen. Thank you, God.
Good morning. For this last day of February 28th, the daily word is connection. I honor my connection with all people. No matter how great the distance that exists between me and the people I care about, I know we are connected by our love for one another. Today, I reestablish and strengthen this connection by reaching out, even if it's only to let someone know I'm thinking of them. Our connection is also kept strong through prayer. As I pray for those I care about, I bless them by holding my highest vision for their lives, seeing them as healthy, prosperous, happy, and fulfilled. Whether we're in frequent contact or have fallen out of touch, my connection with my loved ones remains strong because we are one in God, one in love. And the Bible verse is from Corinthians. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit.
We are held in the hands of grace, forever safe in the arms of love. Like a child receives protection from a mother's warm embrace, we are held in the hands of grace. Just as sure as the sun will rise, I know that Spirit watches over me, and I know that I'm protected from any harm that comes to be. We are held in the hands of grace. Put your trust and your faith in God, and you will never be alone again. When your heart becomes connected to your soul, then you will be free to be held in the hands of grace. We are held in the hands of grace, forever safe in the arms of love. When your heart becomes connected to your soul, you will be free to be held in the hands of grace, to be held in the hands of grace. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, James HIggins. Oh, let's ride that wave of grace that James has so beautifully prepared for us, and let it touch your heart, that our heart becomes part of our soul as we move into this beautiful season of Lent and this beautiful meditation. Allow yourself to breathe and release in the ways that work best for you. Let your body go. Focus on your breath. Breathing in renewal and exhaling release. And with that natural, organic, divine flow of renewal and release, I'll read from Unity's Spiritual Practices for Lent. I release any belief in limitation. I renew my sense of possibility. I release a habit of judging others. I renew my commitment to see the divine in all things. I release all doubt and indecision. I renew my divine power of wisdom. I release negative thinking. I renew my positive expectations. I release discontent. I renew gratitude in all things. I release apathy. I renew my zeal and enthusiasm. I release the fear of lack, and I renew my awareness of abundance in my life. I release any sense of worry. I renew my faith in divine order. I release thoughts of competition, and I renew my willingness to cooperation. I release any need to complain and renew my outlook through appreciation. I release old feelings of bitterness. I renew inner peace by forgiving. I release feeling stuck, and I renew my will to take the next step forward. I release any feelings of hostility. I renew my practice of non-resistance. I relieve thoughts of illness, and I renew my openness to the healing power of spirit. I release anger. I renew my patience. I release any sense of discouragement. I renew my hope with the power of affirmative prayer. I release my darkest fears. I renew the strength and courage of my heart. I release feelings of loneliness. I renew my connection with spirit, self, and others. I release problems that seem to overwhelm me. I renew my understanding of my spiritual nature. And I release the shadows of sorrow and renew myself in the serenity of the silence, in the silence. And as we move back out of the stillness, we recognize that the stillness knows how to transmute everything that we release. And that spirit knows perfectly how to renew. Trusting always that love knows the way. Love knows the way. It knows the way for us all. And we surround all of those here on our prayer list, here at Unity of Tustin, and all of those in our minds and hearts, with the beauty of the Christ and with the beauty of the love that knows the way to our wholeness and our ongoing, ever-present renewal.
All is good with God. Trust and you will see. We pledge a vow to stay in love with God, we say. 'Cause all is changed with time. The future none can see. The road you leave behind. Ahead lies mystery. 'Cause all is good with God. On my knees at night I pray for a writer to take his pen and write these words again, that all is good with God. All in life is a change. It's either good or bad. I release my prayer today. In love with God I will stay. 'Cause all with God is so cold. You either win or lose. It's shiny and so new. On my knees at night I pray. 'Cause all is good with God. On my knees at night I pray for a writer to take his pen and write these words again, that all is good with God. pain and write these words again, that all is good with God. Thank you.
All is good with God. Amen. It's wonderful to be here. I'm 2 for 2. Last month, we were in the sanctuary because of rain. This month, we're in the sanctuary because of wind. So next month, when I come, we're going to be in the sanctuary because of snow. I predict it. But actually, I'm going to start by breaking a rule. And the spiritual ministry team decided to focus on one of our core values each month. And this month, our core value is love. And I included a large piece on Teilhard de Chardin because he discerns that all of creation is held and unfolds in a coherent field of love. And that the reason we can trust the unfolding of God, the reason we know that God, all of God is good, is because we can trust in that knowing. But all the details of that kind of are on the Hummingbird House editing floor, because otherwise the talk would be too long. And that floor, by the way, is gorgeous. Thank you for the remodel. And I'm so glad Jim gave a shout out to Connie, Lisa, their partners, and everyone's involved. I just want to say that going into Hummingbird House, there's an energy there that's so beautiful and clear. It feels cared for. And I feel cared for. So I just want to thank you and the community so much for all of the love. But the edit does give us ample time to dive into Susan Beaumont's How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going, which is very relevant for our ministry, and it's very relevant really for all ministries. So for a little background, Susan Beaumont was a longtime congregational consultant with the Alban Institute. And she's been fascinated by the challenge of having to balance spiritual, relational, and organizational ministry dynamics, not without a touch of dysfunction. Right? But what she saw was that there was an accelerated pace of decline in the churches she served. This was measured by a decline in finances, a decline in the number of congregants, a decline in the number of new congregants. And this decline was unchanged, even by her expert advice, even when she saw congregations doing everything right and everything well. And she started to listen what was occurring because more of the same wasn't helping. So she went and got certified as a spiritual director. And as a spiritual director, she learned how to move individual people through a process of transformation by really walking with their soul's journey and letting that lead. And she realized that in her consulting work, she also needed to tend to the transformation of the organizational soul's journey. She realized that her consulting work, just like the churches she served, were going through a liminal period of collective destabilization and transformation. And her work was not to provide answers. It's not to provide the promise of growth, but to help churches tolerate the liminal process of deconstruction and reemergence. It's a big shift, big shift. She became an institutional hospice worker, helping old sacred cows die and midwifing new structures of support to support a future that had not yet emerged. She realized that in these liminal seasons, we're required to build the bridge as we walk on it. And for those who haven't heard my prior talks, when I talk about a liminal season, I'm talking about the process where the old ways no longer work, the new ways haven't emerged, and we're in between with no references. It's a disorienting time, but it's also a fertile time that's ripe with the field of the possibility of evolution and new emergence. And today, Susan says, and many people have looked into this, are seeing that the majority of spiritual communities are in this liminal space. An era of thriving has come to an end, but a new way of being is not yet clear. Congregations are closing, seminaries are failing, denominational structures are imploding. We're struggling to stay alive and relevant. Too many congregations have lost their ability to innovate. And in response to this chaos, church leaders tend to work harder and faster. Staff teams become exhausted, and everyone's chasing the new program or the new charismatic leader that they hope will save the congregation from decline and from extinction. But Beaumont says that there's something much larger happening in the collective. She quotes visionaries like Phyllis Tickle that see that there's a change happening in congregational life that is of the same magnitude of what happened in the Reformation in the 1600s. Krista Tippett sees a spiritual revolution happening similar to the magnitude of the arising of monastic orders in the 6th century. And it's something to consider that perhaps the cosmic field that reinforces existence on the manifest realm seems to be shifting itself. It seems to be attuning to a new harmonic that seems to be destabilizing organizational structures that once were very successful. It's as if on that collective mystical sphere, something new is wanting to be born. So, however we talk about this epic, one thing is clear. More of the same is not sustainable. We're engaged in a transformation, and the outcome of this transformation is presently unknowable. Otto Scharmer talks about this as a process of letting go to letting come. Letting go and letting come. And he reminds us of what Jesus said, that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. And you may remember that this refers to in ancient Jerusalem, a gate that was called the Needle. And it was so narrow that when a fully loaded camel approached it, the camel driver had to stop and take off all the bundles so that the camel was thin enough to pass through the gate. And likewise, to discover our emerging identity, a congregation has to shed what is not essential. And then after crossing the threshold, we're pulled forward and upward into a space of new possibility. We can see the eye of the needle as the threshold between an old consciousness and a new consciousness. The new consciousness is calling us. It wants us to transform into it, but it requires the trust of knowing that love knows the way and giving up our need to predict and control the way. And in this way, we are worthy of that evolutionary potential because we are allowing ourselves to also be transformed in the process. It's a deep faith. Susan Beaumont says, congregations today need to surrender to the realities of decline and stagnation. Could you imagine her as a CEO? We need to quit fighting our liminal reality as if this is something we can ward off by striving harder at what we know to do, by saying yes to what is, by saying yes to decline. We can align ourselves with a future that needs and wants to emerge through us. Whew. That's big. And not surprisingly, it fuels a little anxiety, doesn't it? And how do we usually act when we're anxious? Are we our best selves? Instead, we generally try to return to the comfort of a previous era's status quo or to leap forward dramatically before its time. And we look to leadership to provide equilibrium and to provide comfort. And when a leader doesn't do this, we sometimes then doubt the leader's ability. But Susan Beaumont has discerned that in liminal seasons, leadership is very different. The primary work in leading people through a liminal space is to normalize the experience. It's to normalize the unknown and to even see it as acceptable, inevitable, and even desirable. Desirable to be in service of a spirit that wants to emerge. Desirable to be an evolutionary arrow towards increasing wholeness and a new paradigm, which will have inherently within it new capacities for love and peacemaking and unity. But one of the hardest parts is that most of us don't understand this, and we think that something is wrong. But if we don't let go, we cannot make the adaptive leap into reorientation. And we're going to be tempted, Beaumont says, to come up with fixes. So a fix might look like, we have less numbers, let's combine 2 services into 1. Or let's defer maintenance on our buildings. Or let's reduce staff and cut salaries. But Beaumont cautions us that these fixes do not address the deeper fix of having us come to terms with our own self-image. And some members will leave during liminal periods, especially those who value being part of a church with a large, resource-rich identity, which is certainly something Unity of Tustin has had. Unity of Tustin has had quite a heyday. There's gifts and there's some tricks in there. And in fact, during my visit last month, the first deep conversation I had with a member who'd been here a very long time, I asked, this community experienced such a golden era. Why do you think people stay? And without missing a beat, this person responded, for love of community. For love of community. And Beaumont says to us that one of the opportunities of liminal reorganization is that it leads to the emergence of communitas. Communitas is a Latin word that refers to the community that's formed with a lot of well-being and egalitarian goodwill. Old hierarchies dissolve, a sense of fellowship, spontaneity, and warmth emerges, and a new ethos of interrelatedness springs forth in communitas. And an example of this is the maintenance of our gardens. Connie works as the new paradigm leader, where she's more of a conductor on the side. And small groups of dedicated congregants on their own time and in their own organic way tend to many different aspects of the garden beautification. And I've heard from so many of you that it's never been more beautiful, that there's something special happening now. And it's that palpable consequence of communitas. During these times, creativity, compassion, daring, curiosity emerges. And things like cynicism, arrogance, and callousness seem to drop away. These times are ripe with opportunities for communities to deepen in faith and to deepen their practices of group discernment and to watch for the movement of God and what Spirit wants to bring forward. And Beaumont talks about this, that during these seasons, the organization is naturally more receptive to rediscovering and working with divine essence. The veil is a little thinner. Our relationship to Spirit is a bit more immediate. And we can take advantage of this opportunity to more clearly discern what are our core callings to focus on. What are our missional identities that we can hold in a singular focus to help us move through the eye of the needle? Beaumont calls this our charism, discerning our charism. And a charism is a calling that is beyond and more than our mission and values. When conventional structure is falling apart, it's our charism that helps us remember who we are and what matters most. It's our missional identity and our clear priorities that guide our organizational life. And what she observes is that no matter what the size or what the abundance of the spiritual organization, those that have discerned their charism and their soul's calling are palpably more vibrant and alive, and they're palpably uplifting the spirit of everyone within that community. They're moving consciousness forward through their cohesion around a charism of love. So she gives some examples of charisms to help make it concrete, and I'll share a couple with you. So she gives an example of a large church which grew from scratch to attendance in the thousands by discerning that their charism was to reach the unchurched 35-year-old male. Pretty specific, right? Kind of riled up my little feminist spines, I guess you could say. But it made a lot of sense because the founders discerned that there were many churches where women felt comfortable, but there weren't many where men felt comfortable. So if there was a worship meeting and the question was, what music should we have on Sunday? The question would be, well, what does a 35-year-old man want to listen to? And that's kind of what brought things forward. And what happened is that they developed the most thriving youth and family ministry in town. Why? Because 35-year-old men didn't want to go to church that their children weren't excited to be at. They had a really thriving women's program, even though they didn't have anyone on staff to organize it. Why? Because women were very excited to go to a church where their male partners wanted to be at, and they didn't have to be dragging them along. So you can see, I think, how these charisms help define our purpose and allow kind of these caves of possibilities to open. Another example she gives is of a tiny church who realized they had a gift of walking with people in recovery. Many of the members were in recovery, and they really embraced people with early recovery. And then they also developed a thriving outreach to the homeless ministry because many people in the homeless community have addiction and recovery issues. And she says that this church never got big and it never got rich, but there was a vibrancy, a dynamism, and a consciousness upliftment that was palpable and that drove everyone forward. So it brings up the question, what is our charism here at Unity of Tustin? What's our charism now? And what's our charism in the future? Who are we being called to be? So I was in meditation on Thursday night and I got this aha. I'm like, well, what's the average age of our community? And it occurred to me it's not young, okay? And I'm like, well, if this ministry was centering a 35-year-old, what if we centered 75-year-olds, right? What if our charism is what are the needs of the average 75-year-old? And whole caves of possibilities opened up. We could become experts in the final third of life. We could create programs where we record people with mindful interviews of the wisdom that they accrued during their lifetime so it can be memorialized as a legacy. We could be known for creating amazing ministries to help people through a medical crisis and the end of life and have amazing celebrations of service, of celebrations of life that include spiritual ministry and practical ministry for the whole family involved. Things become a little clear just by imagining. I also believe that Spirit comes to us as our life. So I'm thinking, what's emerging right now in our ministry? And I've only been here 2 months, but there's been 3 instances of community members wanting to engage in spiritually motivated social activism as part of their spiritual expression, but meeting some concern because there's understandable concern that in our polarized world, such activity could be divisive. It's a challenge. So what if that was our charism? And we wrestled with this challenge and became pioneers on how to have effective civil discourse, how to agree and disagree with love, how to connect with interfaith communities that are really engaging this issue and talk with the wider unity movement of what's working and how can we embody this in a more masterful way and bring it in our own lives. Or perhaps our charism isn't yet known. For example, I interviewed Gary and Jane Simmons for our upcoming Conscious Conversations. And they've created a model of ministry with specific practices and protocols to create the conditions that will make it more likely for second-tier consciousness to emerge on an individual and organizational level. So for those of you who are rusty on your spiral dynamics, first-tier consciousness that most of us are in, certainly my center of gravity, is a consciousness that's still based in survival. It's a little bit fear-based. It's a little bit ego-based. Second tier, we move into our center gravity being in our beingness and being in love and having organizational models that support that individual consciousness. And they are developing the tools to get us there and keep us there on a collective community level. So maybe we become a community dedicated to usher us in from first-tier consciousness to second-tier consciousness while we, through trial and error, fine-tune these processes of transformation. We don't know, but this is the opportunity. What is alive? What wants to be born that can hold us together as we let go of what's no longer needed and move through the eye of the needle? So I'm going to give you a couple of homework assignments. One is if Gary and Jane's work interests you, listen to Conscious Conversations on Wednesday or in your own time. Because he said, If there's resonance, they'll do an hour and a half Zoom with us just so we can ask questions and see if it's a good match. Also, if brainstorming this for us interests you, join us on Thursday for the How to Lead When You Don't Know Where You're Going group. Because we're going to take some time and discern what do we see our present charisms and where are the commonalities, and what do we see as our future and where are the commonalities. And it's not to decide, it's not to fix it, but it's to fertilize the soil and see what seedlings may already be sprouting. What's organically happening already? And maybe we just simply have to stay in the unknowing for a bit longer. Do our best, put one foot in front of the other until our clarity of purpose emerges. Because ultimately, as spiritual evolutionaries, our goal is to engage emergence. Emergence is the sacred process of order arising out of chaos. It's only possible if we admit that there is a relational force of intelligent love moving all of this forward. That's the only way we get wholeness out of chaos, order of a bigger magnitude out of disorder. And liminal seasons are inherently chaotic. And emergence is what happens when out of the chaos and disorientation, something emerges from the bottom up. And that's a key point. It's not from the top down of predict and control and strategy and first-tier consciousness. It's from the bottom up. It's a new way of being with elegance and simplicity that arises when disorder resolves itself and something new arises from underneath. But Beaumont cautions us that we're so busy calming people down and trying to go back to the status quo that we snuff the process out. But she reminds us that the Scripture says the old has gone, the new has come, and all of this is from God. Emergence is allowing Spirit to create something from nothing, if only we get out of the way and allow it to happen. So one beautiful example of this is the flocking impulse of birds. So in New Mexico, each winter, migratory birds nest in Bosque del Apache just south of Albuquerque. And it's a wonderful thing to do as a family. You get there real early in the morning and you go bird flock hunting. So you drive around, you see if you can see a lot of sitting birds, or you see where the little group of cars. You get out of your car, you look at the birds, and you wait. And then, of a sudden, thousands of birds all at once swoosh upward in beautiful designs, take off in flight. And then you watch where they go, and you try to kind of eyeball it. You get back in your car and you drive to them, and then you get out of your car and watch, and they do it again. And they do this again and again in the dawn until they're ready to go off and get their food for the day. Now, the remarkable point for us is that this process is not led by a pilot bird. No one rules the roost. But instead, it's guided by 3 simple rules. The first rule is the rule of separation. Respect the space of the bird next to you. Don't run into the nearest bird. The second rule is the rule of cohesion. Always seek to be moving towards another bird. So keep your space, but don't get too far away. And the third rule is the rule of alignment. Always steer in the direction of your 6 closest neighbors. And all of this happens internally within the flock with no one being in charge. So what if our congregations worked like this? What if there were simple rules that held our center and guided our passions and inspirations, so this more or less leaderless dynamic could take flight? Perhaps this is what the emerging field of cosmic consciousness is wanting to form. Perhaps the hierarchical model is being asked to transform and be more like a flock of birds in flight. Beaumont encouraged us to move from striving to surrender, to acceptance, to have the courage to say, what if we stay grounded in spirit, centered in community and love, and let some of this fall apart? What might happen next? Because love knows the way. And when the collective system finally yields to disruption, she said, this is when innovation, evolution happens. The system discovers new practices that reconciles the disruption, and new systems begin to cohere around our core values, around what matters most, around what is going to serve the future. Because innovation is where spirit leads. And spirit leads often with unexpected, almost magical leaps of grace. It's where new possibilities emerge, where the possibility of heaven on earth becomes closer and closer. Spirit's greatest work through us occurs in this liminal space, and it's predicated on our faith that life has directionality, that it unfolds in divine order, and that it is guided by an intelligent love that knows the way. So I will end with this quote from Frederick Buechner. We find by losing, we hold fast by letting go. We become something new by ceasing to be something old. This seems to be close to the heart of that mystery. I know no more now than I ever did about the far side of death as the last letting go of all. But I begin to know that I do not need to know, and that I do not need to be afraid of not knowing. God knows, and that's all that matters. So I hope for you and for us all that we hold on to that knowing that God knows as we release and renew through this Lent period and beyond. God bless.
Thank you, Shara. It occurred to me while Shara was speaking that one of the things that we've always characterized ourselves at Unity of Tustin is that we want to be on the edge of evolutionary consciousness. And in order to do that, we have this lovely campus, and we have all of the things we offer here, the staff and the projects that we do, the prayer chaplains, all of the offerings that we have. But all of those are in service to that higher consciousness of evolutionary development in the world. So when you give your tithes and love offerings, yes, it's going to support this Sunday service and James being here with us and Carol, but even more so, the higher awareness is that we're here to support the evolutionary consciousness, the raising of consciousness in the world. So let's say together the love offering blessing and recognize that we are supporting this worldwide effort toward higher consciousness. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And James has one more gift for us.
Was that your smile? Or was it sunlight through the trees? Was that your sigh? Or just a gentle breeze? Was that your voice? Rolling waves upon the seas? Is this a dream? Or can it be that I'm seeing for the very first time the rustling leaves that bring your laughter all around, the dancing wind, feet barely touching down? Oh, was that a sound, or was it nature's melody? Is this a dream? Or can it be that I'm seeing for the very first time? Yes, time is on our side, and a seed planted in love will grow. We're each a part of everything and everyone. Was that my heart? Or was it thunder with this rain? Was that a spark? Did you touch me once again? Was that my eyes? Or are you looking back at me? Is this a miracle? Can it be true that it's possible to make one heart of two? It's not a dream. I do believe that I'm seeing for the very first time. Seeing for the very first time. See for the very first time. The very first time. Seeing for the very first time. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And before we close today, I just want to remind everyone that we will still maintain our social distancing guidelines. Thank you all for being with us. It's been wonderful to be back in the sanctuary. Just been a good feeling. As much as we love being outside, it's nice to be back in here for today. So John Claude is also with you to pray if one of you has a prayer request that you would like to share with him. And let's say the greatest affirmative prayer of unity, the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you all for being with us today.